Shepherd. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. The next item on our agenda is public participation. As you know, according to our bylaws, this is an opportunity for people from the public to speak and make comments that pertain to the fiscal emergency plan or the declaration or some other matter under consideration of the commission. We're happy to have you come forward. Our bylaws state that you can speak for a 3-minute period. Now's the time. Okay. Apparently, we don't have anybody who's going to speak today, which is fine. We will move on then. And our next item is the reports of the financial supervisors. Again, you received the majority of those in advance. I think there was an additional one that came in that has been added to your packet that will be new to you this morning. So I will turn this over to April and Anna Merritt.
Which will that be?
It's, okay. So you got A, B, C, D is the new one as of this morning. It's in your packet. It's the reconciliation. It was not ready until I got it yesterday, and I have it for today.
What does it look like? Okay.
It's on the back.
Oh, it's on
not
the back.
quite, not quite the back.
It was in the packet I left on your table.
It's got to be in here somewhere.
Yeah. It should be before the tax budget. There it is.
Got it. Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay. Attachment A is a statement of cash position. That will be the first thing that we're looking at. On page 1 of 2, we have the general fund, the street fund, and state highway, which is 01, 02, 03, which is part of our fiscal funds. They are all positive at this time at the end of May, which is the last reconciled month. The general fund had a positive unencumbered balance of $2.3 million. The outstanding encumbrance amount that is listed there is the outstanding purchase orders at this time. Many of those do cover the rest of the year. The other fund that I would like to point out again is the water fund, and it is negative $512,000. We will be discussing that further down as one of our agenda items, and April will handle that at that time. No other funds are in the negative. Does anybody have questions over this?
The stormwater management has a little bit of a negative after the encumbrances.
Yeah, that's after encumbrances though. So I look at the unexpended balance for negatives.
Do we know what that is? Is that the project up on, Mayor, do you know?
I don't know.
It's
No, we
probably,
haven't received a bill on
without
it.
looking, I'm going to guess that it's an encumbrance for something probably from JMA that covers the whole year, but you've not gotten the cash in yet because you get money, you'll get money in the second settlement into there.
Thank you.
Anything else on A? Okay. B is our recovery plan revenues versus actual revenues. It's a one-page item. What we're looking at to see is where they are overall for the fund. At the end of 5 months, we should be around 41.67% if you take 5 months over 12 months and comparing where we are on our collections. In the general fund, we are at 45% overall for the year at the end of May. Our biggest revenue source is municipal income tax, and it is right now at 43.5%. It is meeting projections at this time. I talked with the city treasurer's office, and they look at the projections a little differently than we do here, and it is right now on schedule to meet the estimates at the end of the year. The other big items would be property taxes. We have received our first settlement here at the city of Norwood. The second half would not be collected until, received until September, October. Some other ones I wanted to point out are fines and forfeitures. They're a little higher than we had expected at this time, but traffic fines have been collected are higher than they have been in the last couple of years. And then investment income, we've kind of talked about that as well. They have been putting money into Star Ohio as of the end of last year, and that is coming in higher than expected. That's all dependent upon what the interest rates are and then the balances that can be moved into those bank accounts. And right now they use Star Ohio. Any questions over the general fund?
Where does that investment money go ultimately?
The investment money has to be posted into the general fund, and by code, it has to go a percentage into street and state highway. So you will see, that's why you see those interest monies there as well.
Sounds good, thanks.
The other two funds on here, street and state highway, they are a little lower than what target is. We are watching those. We do expect those potentially to go up with gas tax monies. We'll see how that plays out in the next couple of months.
Did you say what the other revenue was? I might have missed that.
No, I did not. The other revenue, they had a large amount of property tax refunds that came back, and they also had a premium on, or they had an insurance check as well.
Thanks.
Is there any other questions about revenues? So we'll go to C, which is our expenditures. This is the actual expenditures through May versus the recovery plan by department. Again, we want to see things really lower than target at 41.6%, which is 5 months divided by 12. We have a couple of departments that are slightly exceeding right now, and that's because we've had, 1 year payments being made, we had memberships being paid, things like that. So you have something that is one lump sum payment, and we're in the 5th month, so it kind of throws off the target percentages. The other thing is that they have made actually by the end of May 6 payments for health insurance instead of 5. That also throws off the targets if you take 5 months versus 12. And that is really covering a lot of these slightly exceeds. So I'm going to go over the ones that aren't because of that. Does that make sense?
There was that one you just pointed out, the medical?
They made 6 payments for health
Yeah,
insurance.
what, is it on page 1, 2?
Well, that's part of the ones that are, like, it's on all of them.
Oh, it's
For
sprinkled,
anybody,
okay, so they're all.
it's all through there.
Right.
So
Okay.
even in some of the departments that aren't exceeding, I'm just letting you know, those are 2 big things that are occurring.
And that's just because we pay the premium in advance.
Yeah, we did,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, so on page 2 of 6, I want to point out transportation on the sign. Right now, that's at 43% spent instead of 41. That has a lot to do with gas costing prices. We're watching that one for now. The police administration department, and that will lead into some other departments. We paid clothing allowance. Well, we didn't. The city paid clothing allowance that is required within the union contracts. That's a one-time payment during the year, and it's in the front part of the year. So that will throw off percentages as well. Page 3 of 6, the fire department, they also had clothing allowance paid. They had the buybacks on their leave balances that were paid in the front part of the year. And the other big one is the radio fixed expense, which is a debt. That payment was made in full in February. So that would definitely throw off percentages for the fire department.
And that's for the year they paid?
Yes. The EMS department, the big reason why this one is at 51% is they also did a payment fully. It's a one-time payment for the year. It's an annual. It's not a biannual payment for their debt as well that they have. So that should start getting back into alignment once we get into further
For their
months.
what?
They have debt as well, EMS. Yes. The city garage, lot of that, it's a little higher, so I wanted to talk about that. They had the 6-month health insurance, and then they made a half debt payment as well that they have. So they have another half coming, but since we're at the 5th month and not the 6th, that also plays into percentages.
Question on those debt payments, is that to cut the interest, or is that required by the agreement, or? do you know?
Required by the agreement.
Okay.
All the agreements are different. We have a few that are monthly, we have several that are bi-yearly, and then we have a few that are yearly.
Got it,
So it's all dependent upon that amortization schedule.
got it.
Okay, page 4 of 6, the retiree benefit program. Now, this was the program that changed in 2019, that council approved, where they went away from the older version to the new version, and Donna can talk more about that if she would like. But they went through the process of the applications, they went through the process of approving, and then they have made their payment out to those people that were approved. I think at this time, unless she says differently, I think this is really what we will see as a payment out. If anything else, it might be small, right?
I'll give you a report.
So this, today, okay.
Yeah.
We think this is gonna be a payment for virtually the whole year.
Then the retirees' health care, this is also from, it's a lag from the old retirees' benefits that they had. We had planned it in the recovery plan that we would have the loss of the payouts this year, and this is what has been paid out to date through May. We may see a few more. Donna can also answer those questions later if she would like, but this is where we are right now. We figured that they would have higher payments in the first half of the year, and the claims coming in at that time. So this doesn't surprise us. We still feel that they will stay within budget for this as well.
And which one was that? That was the last one?
The
on page?
retirees' health care, non-department.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay. Then on page 5 of 6 is the debt service, debt payments. They have made, yes, sir.
Quick question, on the subsidy C9 trust apartment, was that, I don't recall, was that 250 an estimate of
Yes.
potential claims to come in because the window was still open for people to submit through the end of the year?
There is a potential that we could have another payout, and that would have come from Benovations, is why that was estimated.
But that was just kind of a educated guesstimate?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I remember. Thanks.
You're welcome. Page 5 of 6, this is debt service overall. They have already made their big principal payment and one interest payment. They have one interest payment left, so they are still on target to hit the budget amount. They just had the large principal that was due in the first half of the year, and that's why it's at 95% spent. And that takes care of the general fund. Is there any other questions about the general fund until I get to the last page? Okay. The last page, 6 of 6, this is your street and state highway. Really, to date, they haven't spent very much at all, only in state highway, nothing to date on the street. I do foresee some expenditures coming as those plans come in and they get to work on projects. So again, that can be addressed to the council and mayor. So, any other questions over expenditures? Okay, so D, which was the new one, is the bank reconciliation for May. As you can see, we have listed all of the banks that they have, and then the adjusting factors like deposits in transit, outstanding checks, some things that need posted, and it's a timing thing. And then we still have the reconciling item, but it's still low at around $5,700. Any questions over that?
But it is balanced.
Well, other than, there's this item here that's being researched, yes, that's listed.
Yeah, we see that a lot, so hopefully it'll get reconciled.
So that's the same thing that's kind of been shrinking over time, right? It was like 20 and then
Yeah, it went to
kinda
10.
nickel and dime going down.
Yeah, we're at
well, that's good.
57, so, yeah.
And this is
We
where
also
the
have
interest
some-
income comes
go ahead.
from? This
What?
is where the interest income is coming from?
So your interest is really coming from those two Star Ohio accounts. They're Star Ohio and Star Ohio Fund 89. So
And to clarify, you said when we get the interest from that, they go into streets or state highway funds?
They go into the general fund, street, and state highway. There's a high revised code section that requires that it be posted to street and state highway as well because of gas tax monies.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the very last thing that I have is more for your information. It's the City of Norwood's tax budget, and this was approved by council recently. This is a requirement under Ohio Revised Code 5705.28. This county does require a tax budget to be prepared. Really, what we did, it was prepared by the city auditor's office and then presented and approved by council. What's required is 2 years of actual information. You show the current year, and really you're budgeting for 2020. What our office did was make sure that the total revenues and total expenditures presented for the general fund and the other fiscal funds mirrored what the recovery plan has. Now, again, I will remind you that the general fund in the recovery plan also has Fund 89 in it because that's the incentive from income tax. And to show income tax properly at gross amount, we include that in the recovery plan. But for this purposes here, for the tax budget, it does not include those monies. So if you tried to take them, you would have to know how much is really going to Fund 89, which is what our office did. The presentation of this tax budget is slightly different than the recovery plan. It is something that the county requires, and then the details a little different than what we have. It's broken down differently. So we did review this, they have approved it, and we're presenting it to the commission.
And you feel it does align with the
Yes.
recovery plan? That's great.
In total, yes.
Yes.
Does the commission need to approve this as well? Or just informational?
Yeah, I don't, last year, I think it's just informational, but I think last year the commission did grant us authority to approve it, financial supervisor.
I know you guys did, I just,
This is due to the county by July 20th, so.
Any surprises in here or anything that you didn't
No,
expect?
because it's pretty much following what the recovery plan had, so. And I actually sat down with the city auditor and we talked about a few things, so.
I don't recall us approving it last time. Do you recommend we do?
I don't, no, the commission did not approve it, you just took
We were aware.
motion and gave the financial supervisor the authority to approve it in the context of the recovery plan.
Yeah, I thought that was an overarching motion. Would you like another one?
I don't need one.
Okay.
That's what I
I always
had.
ask.
Yeah.
Before any ordinances go on, we always clear them with the supervisors.
Of course.
That's the financial report part.
Okay. Your minutes had mentioned a water fund analysis, so just give us a
that's
brief
fine.
update.
Yeah. Okay, so what we did with the water fund is, the assistant chief of our region, what I had him do is he came down here and he met with the utilities clerk. We went through, he looked at certain bills, he matched up the actual billing coming into the city from Cincinnati Waterworks, took like a sample test of like 5 different accounts, picked the largest ones, just to make sure that what was being billed is what's being collected, deposited into the correct fund. And the short version is that all looks good. So I'll be having a conversation with the city to talk about rates, because what it appears in comparing not only the water but the sewer is you have some salaries coming out of the water fund. Of course, nothing is coming out of the sewer fund because that's pretty much a pass-through, but the city is providing a billing service. So I think there might be some potential there to recoup some salaries. But basically, you know, the water fund, the amount being charged as far as rates for the water fund isn't covering all of the expenses. And that's why you see the fluctuation and having a deficit. That's the short version. But I am satisfied with the testing that Chris did as far as making sure that things were being receipted into the correct funds properly. Now I think it's just a matter of taking a look at rates.
With all the recent rain, was there any issues that came up that relative to water in general and unexpected cost or,
Not relative
Flooding
to
or
water, but I
whatnot.
would say stormwater, and there is an issue, yes.
is that something that, I mean, is that,
That's not going to come out of the water fund, so.
right?
There's a
But
separate fund
is
to
it
take care of that.
significant? Is it anything we need to worry
I
about? Or
don't
anything
know,
that
I
might
think
change
that
the numbers or
change the numbers for what?
the estimated expenditures or anything like that?
Possibly. I don't have that estimate yet, but I
Okay,
do
but
know
nothing
that there's an issue.
catastrophic, from what we know.
Yeah, I wouldn't
There's
consider
not
it
just some big
but it's gonna be, extra dollars because
Okay,
anytime you
but
have.
not like just some absurd amount or something?
No, I
Okay.
don't believe so.
Okay.
Everybody always asks about the surplus in the sewage account.
Yes.
Do we look at that? Because we get we get an administrative fee for collecting and, those payments and
Right.
sending them on to the city and into the county,
So I
to the
can-
sewer district.
Yeah.
I mean, are we,
We did
is all
both.
that going into sewer? Is it
Yes.
potentially, or,
Well, I
can we
can
take
just-
some money from sewer or charge
Okay.
some of the billing into that? Because the
That's a-
sewage has excess.
Right, it does, and we did look at that. So I can tell you, because I have Chris looking at both water and the sewer. So every year from 2010 through 2017, revenues exceeded expenses in the sewer fund by, between $300,000 and $500,000. So I'm not an attorney, but I do believe that you may have provision to petition the tax commissioner to transfer those dollars from your sewer to the water. There is another municipality that I know that has done that, but that is the only way that I know that you would be able to move those dollars.
And we petition who?
The tax commissioner, Ohio tax commissioner.
Can we, as council do that, or the administration do that? How do we begin that?
I will need to work with your auditor on that process.
I know when we talk in terms of rates, the last few years, Cincinnati's raised their rates 2.5%, 3%. The city has raised rates to the consumer 5% because we have expenses and, those go up. Vehicles and all the stuff that can be charged to that. So, I mean, I know
Right.
they've certainly been responsible in trying to pass those rates on, and there's been a lot of pushback from the community. So for you to say, we're
Look
not
at
covering
rates.
expenses.
Yeah. No,
Can't
there
wait
is-
for the outburst.
I get it, yeah, because you're not only charging for the cost of the water, you have to charge for the cost of providing, because even though you're getting the water from Cincinnati Waterworks, you still have to maintain
Correct.
and, right.
Right.
So, yeah, I get that. So I can work with Jim Stith on petitioning the tax commissioner and get with him on those documents to get that ready to bring to council if that's the route that
I'm almost certain that I would want you to do that. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Anything else on that, April?
That's all I have on that.
Okay. And we've covered, is there anything else you need to share with us? We've got that done? Okay. Thank you very much, financial supervisors.
Item number 6 on the agenda is a discussion of the fire and police division staffing. And as you know, at our last meeting of the commission, we approved a financial plan that was predicated on a number of assumptions. And since that time, the mayor has sent a letter both to the fire and then a separate letter to the police indicating that he is going to begin the hiring process, which will take the financial plan into a whole different world because these will exceed the assumptions that were embedded in that plan. So as the result of that, as a commission, we're going to need to talk about a revision of the financial plan. So in terms of the fire and police division staffing, I can read these letters. They're very short. Would that be helpful? Okay, the first letter was sent on May 17th to Chief Wallace, and it said, "Be advised, you are hereby directed to begin the hiring process. The intent is to go to 49. I have received mixed information that I've been told over the past months. I've decided that the best thing to do is to follow the contract. We will most likely move to take you to 52 prior to the end of the year. Sincerely, Thomas Williams." The second letter was sent June 19th, 2019, to Chief Kramer. "Chief, as you know, I sent a letter to the fire chief advising him to begin the hiring process. I am sending you the same letter, even though you and I have discussed on many occasions to begin the hiring process. So I'm advising you in writing that as soon as the test is complete, we expedite the interview and hiring process as fast as you can possibly do it. My intent is to hire. I have decided that the best thing to do is follow the contract. We will most likely move to take you to 52 prior to the end of the year. Sincerely, Thomas Williams, Mayor." So with these actions, we're going to need to contemplate a similar action by the commission. And we're going to need to ask for a revised financial recovery plan. And the city is going to need to then put something together or to have the mayor retract these letters. And so I'll stop right there and let the financial supervisors.
But just to
But
clarify,
yeah.
the first letter was written to whom?
I'm sorry, it's really small type that I did not receive an original copy. It's to Chief Ron Wallace.
Fire department.
Fire department.
Fire, and then police came second?
Yeah, May
Okay, 'cause
was
it sounded like the
fire.
numbers were exactly the same.
Yeah, I think they are.
Am I hearing that right?
Well, this one,
It said 49 and 52, I think, for both of them, but I wouldn't think
this
they would have
police one
identical
doesn't
staffing.
have the 49 in it. It has the 52. And then there's 52 in the fire as well.
Okay. That's just coincidental, or is that?
So I can answer a few things and they can too. So the recovery plan for the fire department for 2019 says funded at 49. And then going from 2020 to 2023, the funding level was at 45. So for the police department, the funding level is 45 for 2019 through 2023 in the recovery plan. Okay? The union contracts that are in negotiation at this time, the complement, I do believe, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, fire department is at 52 plus a chief, which would make them 53 overall. But he's in a different department, so for fire department it's 52, fire administration you have the chief. For the police department, I'd have to go back and look at that one. I believe in 2019, again, this one is also a negotiation. It says 50, and I believe in 2020, something about 52. Again, we'd have to go back to the contracts. They have not been at the 45 level at all this year. They've been around the 40, 41, unless you have a higher now. So they were trying to get them at the 45 level by the end of the year. Fire was at 49 in 2019 because that's where they started with. And then there are 4 retirements that are to happen this year, which is why the numbers go to 45 funded in 2020 through 2023 in the recovery plan.
I need that in writing. I couldn't follow. Yeah. Anyway,
Basically, the funding from the recovery plan is where the 49 came from and the 45. And then you have
49
union-
for fire, 45 for police.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that, we did that, it was prepared in a different way for this latest plan that we approved, and it is in the back of the
Oh, it
plan.
is in the back of what?
It's of the attachment of the
The original document?
revised recovery plan
That
from
was
last
done in
time.
March.
The last meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
It was
I may not have
attachment
that.
A,
Yeah, I may not have that with me.
and that was approved by council too.
Okay. So, but police are currently 40 to 41?
And that's the last I knew, so.
With the goal
considering
being
that-
45 and the contract being 49 or 52?
The recovery plan was funded at 45 for
Right.
all 5 years.
Right.
19, and then the union contract, which is in negotiation, has it at a different level. And I don't have it on me, so I
Right.
believe it says 50 for 2019, plus a chief, and then 52, I think, for 2020. But do not, I'm telling you,
Okay.
that's from memory, and
And
I'm
40
not.
49 is actual fire? today?
49 is actual, well, not today, because they've had some movement there, but it was 49 starting out for the year. And we knew that there were 4
Okay.
retirements that were going to happen.
Okay, and the contract calls for,
52 plus a chief.
got it. Okay, thank you.
That would be all that we would have at this time, right? Yes.
Any other questions, comments about
So
this?
what's the plan?
Well, the plan is we
New numbers.
adopted this plan in
Right.
April that is not consistent with the letters the mayor has sent. So at this point, we're going to have a plan that's not in compliance. So there will need to be an adjustment. The adjustment can come in numerous ways, but we do need to understand that as a commission, we have sanctions that are part of the Ohio Revised Code 118 that we have to live with. And when a plan that's been submitted is not in compliance, for whatever reason, if the expenditures or the revenues or whatnot don't make sense and there is no adjustment to the plan, then law says that if the city cannot bring forth a plan that we can approve, then we would need to revert to expenditures not exceeding 85% from the general fund and all funds for that month in the preceding year. That would be an option and that will be something this commission will have to take very seriously should the city not be able to bring to us a revised plan.
How long do they have to have a plan that's out of compliance?
Well, there's some question if they're out of compliance at this moment.
Right.
Because this hiring piece has just come forward.
Sure.
So what we'd like to suggest today is that we give the city about 45 days to prepare a new plan based on.
So figure
these
out
letters.
what that's going to cost and benefits and all that's, and equipment and
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah, and all
then
the adjustments. that
Incorporate
need to
that
come.
into the plan and then reassess the plan and then re-vote on the plan.
Yes. How that will happen is that the city will make that and then they will propose it to council. And in the same manner of which our plan in April came to us and our original plan. And then that approved plan would come to us. And we would then have the authority to either say yes or no to that. It'll be the same thing where we won't be able to make a change here or a change there as a commission. I think secondarily, it also should be impressed that the Ohio Revised Code does also say that if a municipal corporation fails to submit a financial plan as required by this section, the commission shall notify the Ohio Office of Budget and Management and all state funding for that municipal corporation, other than benefit assistance to individuals, shall be withheld until subsequent notification from the commission, this commission, to the Ohio Office of Budget and Management that a feasible plan has been submitted and approved or substantial compliance with the plan has been achieved, as the case may be. Upon receipt of the subsequent notification, the Office of Budget and Management shall release all funds withheld from the political subdivision under this section. That's in law today, so this all needs to be taken very seriously.
If I may, I take that very seriously. I also take very seriously that I have asked on numerous occasions, more than one occasion, what does the state provide for contracts under 118. And I believe, if I recall properly, the statement was made, we don't get involved in contracts. Yet, the largest cost we have is in our contracts. When the state first came in, they said, we will pay all debts. We will pay all debts. A lease is a contract, so we paid off leases. We paid off anything. And the question that became later to me is a legally binding contract a debt? And so we began the process of following the plan. We have not succeeded once. This is not just one bargaining unit, this is all four. We have not succeeded once in defending this position. So I guess the reason for taking this position, we were getting nowhere. We were gaining nothing. And
By
eventually,
adhering to the plan?
yes,
Okay.
we were losing. We saved, actually, there was a lot of money saved for the city by not hiring. A lot. We are dealing with the intangible part of this thing. We are dealing with elections coming up. We are dealing with council spending money or saying the money they're going to spend and we're going to do all this and we're going to do all that, which almost makes it impossible for us to make any groundwork with these bargaining units. I have paid the price, and I don't mind. That's the job. That's my responsibility. In more ways than you'll ever imagine, trying to get this thing settled. And the fact of the matter is, most people understand a legally binding contract. We had one member of the bargaining unit say in this meeting, what about our contracts? I took the position, right, wrong, or indifferent, to follow that plan. The plan was originally based on numbers. The number 45, from what I was told, came from, well, there's so much money for the police and so much money for the fire. How much will that cover? It'll cover this many people. That's how the determination for numbers was derived. Part of the way through this agreement, we had one member of council go to another department and try to negotiate the whole department away, which was totally impossible. It was a negotiating tactic. It was a threat. The way I was raised, you never make a threat unless you're prepared to carry it out. And it set things all the way back. Every time we would try to make, it would blow up in our face. And the fact of the matter is the contract binding? And there's nothing in 118. Nothing. I've been told that the auditor's office is trying to get the legislature to put something involved in it. They're not going to do that. And until they do, it stifles the bargaining. I've been also told that we need to go to Court of Common Pleas. That's where it'll get reserved. Well, here's a fact. When you go to the Court of Common Pleas, no judge that I can think of, there may be, in this area, will go rule against these bargaining units. And what they do, or they take the exit of saying that, well, there's an avenue for you to redress your grievances, which is 4117. So therefore, I don't want to hear it. So we go to 4117, you go to an arbitrator, we lose. We go to CERB, we lose. Why? Because by the plan, and I was for it, don't misunderstand me. I thought, well, this is the way to go, but we can do this. Found out we can't. And it has yet to produce anything positive. And we're going into negotiations again. And unless we make some sort of a goodwill gesture to try to move this off center, we'll lose again. And then when I hear we're following the law that the state of Ohio passed, 4117. And we've tried to follow the law 118, and if it passed, and they're in conflict. So if we go to arbitration following 4117, and we lose again in arbitration, are we going to hear, well, we're going to cut you at 85%? Because we followed the law. And if an arbitrator rules against us, and no judge overturns it, what's the state going to come in and do? We're going to cut you? Now, are these bargaining units tough? You better believe it. They're tough. And they don't trust us. Hell, I'm not so sure I do, and I'm the mayor. I've been fighting this for a year and a half, and it's my way of making an effort to try to get some movement going. Try to show a little good faith. But if everybody digs in their heels and wants a thing, we'll lose. We'll lose. We'll go to arbitration and we'll lose. Because nobody can show me. Nobody can tell me. Anybody. Attorneys, I don't care. I looked at the Attorney General. He sat there. He stared out in space. I don't blame him. You didn't have an answer. You as a representative of the state auditor's office couldn't give an answer because you have no answer. You're restrained by 118.
Yeah, I'm with the state's Office of Budget Management.
Well, whoever. And
we are operating under that.
And you're restrained by the Ohio Revised Code. And if we lose to an arbitrator rules against us, is the state going to come in and say? Are they going to do that? Is this commission going to vote to put the city on 85% when an arbitrator ruled against us? You live here. You have a business here. Are you going to do that? Are you going to vote for that when the city had no choice but to go to arbitration? So my theory is make the attempt, see what happens, and see if something business could come out of it. And I know there are people mad at me. I know there are people upset with me. Get used to it. I've done my time. I've done the best I can. I suffered through this along with everybody else. And I've made this move to make an attempt to settle it, and I'm going to continue down that path. I will work with the financial supervisor in Anna Mary and the auditor to try to come up with a plan. And I will work with the bargaining units to try to come up with a solution. But the path we were taking was useless. It was useless. It cost everybody, and we gained nothing. And some of the people who are supporting, go get him, Mayor, I call you, go get him, are running around and they're saying, well, it wasn't me. I wasn't in favor of that. They're running for cover, and which makes it even more difficult. So for those that are upset with me, I'm not sorry. I made that move, and I will continue to make that move, and I will work with the city auditor, Jim Stiff, who's done miraculous things, and the financial supervisor, April, and Anna Mary's, to work on a problem. And we will continue to work with the bargaining units. But the direction that we took under so-called my plan, I was wrong. It did not work. It saved us some money, but I'm telling you, somebody's going to pay the piper unless we figure out a way to get out of this without forcing something, because it's wrong. And unless somebody can tell me that a binding contract, that a contract is not legal. Unless somebody can tell me 118 provides for relief for municipalities in these contracts. I've asked everybody, a lot of attorneys, of course, nobody wants to touch this openly. No, I don't want to touch this. Is that binding contract stand under 118? And to the person, yeah, it stands. Can we violate that contract under 118? Not legally. I'm still waiting for somebody to tell me that.
Does our attorney have any advice on this situation?
I couldn't discuss what I said with our city attorney.
Well, I mean, I guess what I said at the end of the last meeting, not to cut you off, but just to interject, it's a rock and a hard place, certainly, and you have a contract with police and fire and others. You have a state that's saying you need to be in this situation. The two do not agree. I guess the question to me is, who's the boss? Who's the highest power at the end of the day? Who has the most clout and who will get their way at the end of the day? I think that's the question. And if that's a state, then I think you end up at 85% situation, which I wouldn't consider us voting in favor of that. We would have no choice if that's what they deem. So that was my point 2 months ago, is that I understand where you're coming from and I want to give everybody everything, but who's, it kind of comes down when you're talking taxes or whatever, the federal government, they're number one in line and the bank's number two and so-and-so's number three in a bankruptcy or something like that. Somebody's first, and the question is who's first and who is going to be the biggest bully on the block and who's going to get their way at the end of the day. And I think that kind of answers the question of where we're going to shake out.
The question also is, if it's time, and my theory is to try to move forward, to make some movement, to get some discussion started, to try to rebuild some of the trust. But me personally, if the state comes in and says, I think the commission is the only one that can, I don't think the state, if the commission votes not to impose the 85%, I don't think the state can do anything about it. Maybe they can. But what I'm saying is the state has avoided taking any action whatsoever to remedy this problem. And they have basically left it to us down here at the lower end of the scale to battle each other after they've taken revenue sharing and raised taxes and all that. And then tell us down at the bottom end of the scale, you solve it or we'll solve it for you. Well, I tell you what, it's your laws. It's your 4117 and your 118 that we're going by. And when you ask them about it, they're required to say, we don't have anything to say about it. I will tell you this. I will do what I can to solve the problem. But the way we were going is not the way to solve that problem. I will make every effort I can to solve the problem. But my opinion now is I'm going to move ahead. Am I going to hire up to 52? I don't think we can, but, But, you've got to make some sort of an effort to settle it. If 45 days, maybe something can be done in 45 days. I don't know. But I can tell you this, as mayor, for the time I have left, I will do what I can, not to compound the problem, but to solve it. And being hard about it has not paid off anything. It has not generated one positive thing. Threats have gotten us nowhere. Because, like I said, all four bargaining units, not just two, all four have said, you've violated our contract. And I have said, you're right. So I will make every effort I can to solve the problem and not make it worse for the city. But we have to move this thing off center. And we'll get a plan together and then let council decide. Yes, ma'am, I think,
Yeah, I want to clarify that it's not.
I'd like to introduce, this is Barb Matei-Smith from the Ohio Office of Budget Management.
Hi, so I kind of oversee all the financial commissions for the office. And I want to clarify that it's not a vote of the commission on the 85%. That's a requirement of the law. I mean, it's not that the commission would vote on that. It just says, the law says that if this happens, then your expenditures need to go down. So it's an unfortunate scenario to get caught in, but.
And yes, ma'am, and you're the head honcho, and I'm certainly not going to debate with you. You got more sense than that. But here, It's also a requirement of 4117 that
You're
we
right,
do that.
absolutely.
It's also a requirement of 118 that we do that. What the hell are we supposed to do? I mean, we got all these requirements. We got all these Indians. We got no chiefs. So, like I said, I will do what I can to solve it. But make no mistake, I'm resolved to solve the problem, one way or the other. And if, you know, I mean,
And that's the best you can do, sir, and that's what we all look for.
and that's what I'll do. I mean, you know what? I don't need a pity party. I've paid the price for this in more ways than you ever dreamed possible. And don't misunderstand this. Everybody comes here and everybody goes back home. Okay, they go back home. I'm here every day. I live here. This affects my life and will after I leave office. So I'm going to solve it, do everything I can to solve it, one way or the other. So I guess this would include my mayor's report. Have you heard enough? Do you give up? So out of deep respect, I may appear belligerent, but I'm resolved. And it's going to get solved one way or the other.
So I'd love to, I was trying to follow along, I'd love to understand process here. So we are required by the state to balance our budget. We have some binding contracts with a variety of bargaining units. And we put a plan in place that was below the staffing levels agreed to in the contracts. That seemed to be a viable plan, numbers-wise, but we still had the contract negotiations going on, and there was no resolution there. So now the mayor has said, "Hey, let's agree. Let's comply with the contract. Fire, police, etc. hire per the contract," which violates the budget that we have in place, which means the city needs to come up with a new plan that's a viable plan. And that's the challenge at hand right now. And then if they can't, I suppose that's one problem. But assuming they can come up with numbers that add up, that has to go to the city, and then that plan comes to this commission, and we can either say bravo or sorry, this doesn't really truly make sense. Am I right so far?
You are.
Yeah.
And
You are
so,
doing good.
so there's a huge challenge in even coming up with a plan that would suggest that it's viable. That's on the mayor's shoulders and the city council. What's this 85%?
It's one of the sanctions that's in the law that says if a community can't put together a financial plan, then that's what happens. It reverts to that level of expenditure.
So at what point in this process that I laid out would it be determined that the city can't come up with a plan? It's that the mayor hands nothing to council, that council passes nothing?
Well, actually, you just have to look at number 7 on our agenda, because I have a resolution directing them to provide another plan.
Okay, and I'm good with that. Of course,
Yes.
of course, we'll prove that.
Yes, and so
But
at
let's-
that point, we're going to say you have 45
45
days
days.
to bring forth another plan.
Okay.
Should that not happen, then there would be this 85% piece would come into play.
So 45 days. So if on the 45th day, the council approves a plan,
Yes,
then we don't go to 85%.
Well, the council plan would come to us.
So we have to
And then-
actually approve it in
We
45
will.
days.
Well, or yeah, we'll get the plan within 45 days, then we'll meet a day or two after that. And then determine if that plan
So
makes
council
sense.
has to, 45 days, council has to deliver a plan to this committee.
Yes.
That's what the 45 days is.
Yes.
And if they don't do that, then 85% of what?
Of the previous year's monthly expenditure. So it will be the September 2018 expenditures will be the basis at that point. And it'll be 85% of that September 2018 amount.
Okay, so if,
And then the October, and then the November. It'll be a monthly.
And it's not only that council
Derivation.
passes a plan, it's the council passes the plan and this commission approves that plan.
That's
Because
right.
council could, in theory, pass a plan that comes to you and you all say, this is not
Right.
viable.
It's gotta be a viable plan.
I'm gonna interject, it's a little bit more layered than that. If you put together a plan and council approves it, and it brings it to the commission can either accept or deny at that
Right,
point.
you can't change it, yeah,
They can't change it, but they can send it back
correct.
with a new deadline saying, okay, this is how it's failed to meet our approval. So that 85%, provided a plan is presented, the 85% would not go into effect immediately, right? It would go back to you to work on, to meet what the commission has stated are the goals that they feel were not met in the plan presented.
and there are boundaries, there are legal boundaries on a plan that council can present to this commission, right? I mean, if it's way out of balance to the negative side, that doesn't comply with
That's not a viable plan.
not a
Right.
viable plan.
Or if they want to increase revenues in some sort of way, and we'd say, that doesn't seem viable, that doesn't seem, so there, yeah, we're going to look at the components of it.
So we're, to some degree, not just adding up numbers, we're using judgment, et cetera.
Assumptions, yes.
And so we, okay.
Here's the intangible part about it, and I know I've said this before, and it may, beyond the point whether people think it's proper or not. There's the intangible thing in there, it's called elections. And this council they're somewhat in a tough spot too. But the fact of the matter is that, like I said, I had one thing, well, you go ahead and do it, we got you. Nah, I don't need anybody to have my back. It's just time to, and I'll work with April and Anna Mary and the auditor to work on this plan. And in the meantime, I will try, whether I'll make any progress or not, I will try, after sending these letters in this meeting, to see if we can, if there's any movement whatsoever to come to some sort of an agreement.
Contractually.
Absolutely, and I'm not going to give up on that. I can't. I got an obligation to do that, and I'll do that. But if the rhetoric continues, and everybody digs their heels in, if everybody, let me be crude, if they keep their mouth shut and avoid the grandstanding in political office, and just say, okay, we're open to support, and maybe we can come to some sort of an agreement that people could accept. That's the optimum outcome for this whole situation. If this stirs up some thoughts and gets people moving, including council, then it's been worth it. I'm not going to give up. I've got, a few months to go, and I'm going to fight, to try to correct the problem. And like I said, I can't worry whether who approves and who doesn't approve at this point. I just got to continue on. And I thank you very much for listening to me.
Can I just add something quickly? I would just kind of make a public plea to council that when a new plan is put together, that they give it a full and complete review and make sure that it is viable. I mean, they know a lot more things about how the city is run and what is reasonable and what's not reasonable than, in some ways, than this council. So I don't personally want to be in a position where we get a plan where, you know, it's maybe, yeah, sure, it kind of checks all the boxes, but maybe it's not reasonable, or there's things that we're not informed about, or things where we're put in a situation where we have pressure to approve it publicly, obviously, because we want to go to the 85%, but that I want to make sure many eyes are on it, many eyes with different perspectives, and I trust and expect that council will do that. And as opposed to a 10 o'clock meeting where it kind of gets rushed through and rubber stamped and moved on. And I'm not saying that happens, but I see it in the federal government where they're up till 3 in the morning pushing something through, and everybody's 80 years old. So it's, I would like to make sure it gets, I'd like to make sure, well, with all due respect, I'd like to make sure it gets its due diligence and its proper review from those 9 or whatever folks before it comes to this commission, so that it's been screened and beat up and questioned, and so I ask that of council to do that.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Is it proper, we have a couple of people here, one from police and one from fire, there's a request, a waiving request for 2 people to address this commission? Is that?
Yeah, there was an
I-
opportunity, so I feel like if they...
I had to ask you, I hope you don't mind.
Yeah, if
Just a
they...
question, really. Just not, I don't want to address, I just want to ask a question of the discussion.
No, not at this moment. You're welcome to submit it to us in writing.
Well, the first FRP.
Yeah, that's all,
passed
we're not going to talk
honored
right
the
now.
contract.
We're not going to talk about it.
That go back. It was passed
We're-
and that viable.
Okay, so our next step is to have on agenda a resolution to require an updated financial recovery plan. And, go ahead, Mr. Shepherd.
I'm just moving that we do that.
Okay. Bless your heart. Well, we have a whole resolution here.
I was gonna say, do you have a copy of one?
Yeah. Just to make it clear what we're about. Okay, distribute those. Pass them on down, and I'll read it. It's resolution number 21901, dated today, whereas the city of Norwood was declared to be in the state of fiscal emergency on October 6, 2016, whereas the Financial Planning and Supervision Commission for the city of Norwood, the commission was created pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 118 to assist in the restoration of the fiscal integrity of the city of Norwood, the city, and whereas ORC 11806A requires the city to provide the commission a detailed financial plan as approved by the city council, and whereas the city council approved the financial recovery plan on March 27, 2019, to provide the commission a detailed financial recovery plan, and whereas pursuant to ORC 11806B, the commission has statutory responsibility to approve or disapprove the financial plan of the city, and approved the financial recovery plan on April 2, 2019, and whereas since April 2, 2019, the mayor of Norwood's determined the collective bargaining agreements require the hiring of staff and has directed the hiring of staff in contradiction to the duly approved plan, and whereas the approved financial recovery plan will no longer meet the standards set forth in ORC 11806, therefore, be it resolved that the commission requires the mayor and city council to amend the financial recovery plan within 45 days in order to comply with Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 118, and restore the fiscal integrity of the city. That's the resolution that I would like to move. Is there a second?
I have a question.
Sure, certainly.
The mayor's plan? Is it council's plan? Is it a council plan that the mayor approves? What really constitutes a valid submission to this?
To this commission will be the approved plan by council. The mayor will submit a plan, and the council will give it consideration or not.
Are they allowed to modify it? So it's really the council's plan.
It is.
Okay.
It is. It is, yes. But
Okay.
it emanates from the mayor.
So the mayor could disagree completely, but if it's approved by council, that's valid.
Yes.
I'm not suggesting that as a course of.
It's
Is
the
that-
mayor's plan. The mayor works closely with the city auditor as far as putting the numbers together. He or she takes into account comments, suggestions from council, but the mayor has to take that plan. He is the one to bring it to council floor for their action to be approved on it.
Right, and they could modify the plan.
There's
And-
discussion.
and-
Usually that discussion happens before the mayor actually brings the plan to council floor for approval.
Okay, and I'm not outlining an appropriate path. I'm just trying to get, in the end, the mayor's vote doesn't matter.
Unless it's a resolution.
You have to approve it in resolution form.
Yeah.
What's that mean?
So that means that there has to be a resolution that adopts the financial recovery plan. So if council passes that resolution, the mayor can either sign it, he can let it go into effect without a signature, or he can veto it. So
Okay.
in terms of that, he certainly does have
So he has
control over that.
veto power over, okay, I get
Yes.
it. Makes sense.
That makes sense?
Seems reasonable as well.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just kind of a curiosity question. When these discussions take place about the plan before the meeting, or before, you mentioned before the mayor submits the plan, you hope that those questions and discussions with council and the mayor have been taking place. Are these required to be a public record? Are they at the water cooler, off the books? Is there any requirement for that to be public knowledge, or
Okay, so.
kind of like,
I mean, we're part of the process as well. They bring stuff to us. We try to make sure that the assumptions that are presented to us that want to be put into the plan by the mayor has consideration, and we go, is this reasonable based upon what we know, and is this the path that council is willing to take as well within the plan? Most of that stuff, this is a little bit different. Like some of that stuff, we talk about throughout the year. We have department heads actually send them budgets the last 2 years saying this is what we would like, whether that be needs and wants or whatever the case may be. Most of the payroll information we gather from the city auditor's office. We do ask departments if they're below where they're supposed to be. Maybe not police and fire, but in some other ones, we've had people in and out, and like the treasurer's office is a great example. They're low in employees right now. They have 2 between that earnings tax and then the treasurer's side. So then we are talking, what are we doing here? Then there's, ordinances that have happened about part-time employees. We make sure that is all covered within the plan, and that is what is being presented as fair. Also, we have discussions that are not in a quorum part, and we have sometimes the chair of finance come and talk to us about what really council is looking at, or what he has heard, or whatever. So we have a council perspective. We've had the president of council in some of those meetings as well. We've talked to department heads. So it's never been that part of setting it up. But then the last time the city auditor came, he actually presented the plan because he worked much more closely with us this time. We and him actually went, line by line. I don't agree with this number, and this is why. What's your theory? What's the reasoning behind it? Because we even get down to the nitty-gritty stuff, because that's part of our job as the financial supervisors.
Sure.
And if anybody in this room would disagree, I ask a lot of questions. They would be lying, because I do. And everybody in this room could probably attest to that. That's my job. So, and then she asked me even more questions, and so we do get down to some of the very small things that may be immaterial to the broad perspective, but we have to know what really is the thought process and what's the analysis, and we ask those questions. So then this time, Jim Stiff, who's the city auditor, actually came. He presented it. It was presented to council, and they can ask questions questions. Before that time, we have been the ones that have done that in the past, or we've said, do you want us to come? I think we did the first time. I don't remember if we did the second time and say, okay, well, here's what's in the numbers, and it's based upon what, has been presented to us and the action that the city wants to take. We are just here to make sure that it's reasonable, it's viable. This is the action that they want to take with the known factors at that time. This is a living, breathing document. You have to look and see if known parameters are going to change, which is what we're trying, what's being done here. That stirs that, yeah, we have to, make a change and look to see what has to happen now to make this a viable plan. If the action of going to the staffing levels, as stated in the memos, goes forth. Does that help?
Tremendously.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
So parts of it were, meetings and conferences.
Yeah,
and
I'm
getting
kind of
nitty-gritty
asking the
numbers
question
together.
is that, you see the stuff with Cincinnati City Council and it's like, well, they had this, Party of Five or whatever had this text conversation and that violated the law. Are there similar requirements? I imagine a lot of this is just organically going to happen and back and forth kind of
Yeah.
amongst all the people that have a responsibility
It's
involved
the
in this,
fourth
and
plan.
ultimately, hopefully, we'll get to the right answer.
Do you have something else?
It's trust me, there were many eyes. When you say you want many eyes to look at it, there were many eyes looking at it.
Yeah.
And
I would-
like I say, a lot of the work was done behind the scenes by gathering information, getting the numbers together and going over them and saying, I don't agree with that or whatever. If that happens, how are the numbers going to change? Then the auditor and those guys, Anna Mary and April changed the numbers. Eventually, before it was passed, it was presented, I don't know if it was a finance committee or a meeting of committee of the whole, but there was actually a presentation up on the computer with that we walked through the numbers, what they were. So,
Great.
a lot of work.
Okay, back to the resolution. We kind of slid a tiny bit off it, but that's okay. So I am moving resolution number 21901. Is there a second to the resolution, Mr. Shepherd? All right, I think it would be good to take a roll call vote on this one, if we could.
Mayor Williams.
Yes.
Council President Lake, yes. Mr. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mr. Shepherd?
Yep.
Ms. Bowen, or I'm sorry, Ms. Bowen
Yes.
and Ms. Snyder.
Yes. So by a vote of 6-0, we have approved the resolution. So that is within 45 days from today. And we're mindful that there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm so hoping it can be complied with. I truly am, that you can get this readjusted to make sense for your community, so you can move forward. Number 8 on our agenda is report of the mayor. I know you said you had given your report, but
And if you haven't had enough, I could go on for another time. No, I'm fine.
it is quarter 1.
Any other topics or anything
Yeah,
other
anything
than?
else?
That's
That was
that's
enough.
my life. You just heard it.
Right, I
All
realize
right.
that. Thank you.
Very good. Report of the city council president, Ms. Lake.
In terms of the retirees' health benefit program that was discussed earlier, I looked up the numbers. When I first started taking this on, there were 182 people who were in the old retirement plan. And we sent out applications to all of those people who were still alive. We found a few that were deceased, but sent out applications to all of the folks who were on the list, along with a copy of the ordinance that was passed by council. And when we didn't hear back from them by the end of February, we sent a second notice, and we sent a third notice, so as required by the ordinance. I don't remember how many applications we had, but as the commission, the administrative committee reviewed those applications, it was they were pretty clear whether people met the requirements or they didn't meet the requirements. If we had a question about dates of service or whatever, those were confirmed by the auditor's office, and I want to give a shout out to them. They really, Margie Crowley in particular, Potarala, did a fabulous job of looking up dates of service for people. So the bottom line is that at the present time, there are 140 people who are on the plan. Since that time, unfortunately, two of those folks have deceased. But we did make those payments to them either prior to their death, or we had received an application and it was approved, and so we made it out to the estate.
Sorry, how many were on the plan?
182 initially.
82, and the most recent number is?
140. We had one application where the person did meet the requirements, but the application had to be in by the end of March, and it was dated April the 26th, and so we couldn't approve that. So we sent the letter saying, you know, you missed the deadline and we'll contact you next year. We've had 3 people appeal their denial. We did have the hearing of the appeal, and we are still doing some background research to see what the results of those appeal will be. But it's pretty clear cut, so no one disagreed with anything. There's 5 people on the commission, and it was pretty clear cut. All of these checks have been sent out, and again, kudos to the auditor's office for taking care of that. In terms of the old plan, the folks know that they only have till the end of this year to submit claims for 2018. And that's why I think there's a lot of those payments that have come in early during the year. Recently, we received a check back from Benovation saying that these were checks that hadn't been cashed. And I was like, no, I don't think so. I think probably what happened was their office maybe put the checks in the computer but never printed the checks, because I can't imagine people not cashing checks. Some of them had checks for like $6,000 and $7,000. So we've done research on it, and we're going to deposit that money and reissue checks from the city of Norwood, because they were obviously checks that the folks are entitled to. I'm just glad we're almost finished with it, because I can't imagine dealing with Benovation all these years. I've had to deal with them for 2 or 2.5 years, and I want to pull my hair out. So we will get that money back to the people. So there are some that we don't even know who they are. Nobody in the city knows who they are, so we're trying to figure out where that money came from and who they are. So we're in the process of doing all that. That just happened last week, so I don't really have a great resolution for you, but I want you to know that that is something new that came up.
Stupid question. Did we verify that, if they didn't cash the checks according to Benovation, did we do our own due diligence to know that we did owe those monies to those people?
They wouldn't have issued the check or whatever to pay that unless they were entitled to it. They had submitted bills. A lot of them were insurance reimbursements or medical bills or whatever.
These are cleanup checks from the
Yes,
former
correct,
program.
correct. Yeah. So, like I said, we're in the process of notifying folks and putting together a letter. They refunded us the money, and we felt like it was not our money, it's their money. It was, and the city had already paid that money to Benovation to make those payments to those people. So we've already paid that. So we will be issuing those checks as soon as we get all the dynamics figured out of where the money gets deposited and do we have to change appropriations and all that. So it's a significant amount of money. So. We also passed the ordinance that will sell some excess property. The city has acquired several pieces of property that were abandoned, and so we can be tax exempt on those. We had to pay up the old taxes, which we did. So we did contract with the company to sell the excess property by internet auction. And so that is supposed to be completed by the end of this month. I can let you know how much money we get from that. I don't imagine it'll be an incredible amount of money, but we are doing everything we can to try to divest ourselves of this property that we have to maintain, cut grass and things like that. So hopefully the people who live next door to these abandoned properties, perhaps they can purchase them, or some of the lots may be big enough where developers can come in and put new housing, so. And then we did pass an ordinance that authorized the Safety Service Director to enter into agreement to purchase the eGov computer software, which will help the city do a better job of tracking expenditures, and individual departments will be able to enter their own purchase orders and keep track of their finances to a much better degree. So some positive steps forward.
Thank you very much. We need to look at our calendars for the next meeting, which of course, we're hopeful we'll have a plan to consider. So in order to give that enough time to develop, I'm going to suggest we look at August 14th. That's a Wednesday at the same time, 11:30.
Is it possible to, I'm just out of town, that would be a pretty
Okay.
tough day for me to be here. I know there's time pressure here, but I'd love to see it move back over
To the 21st.
21st or 22nd or something like that.
I'm amenable
Not the
to.
22nd.
Would the 21st work for you?
At this point,
21st?
probably.
Yeah.
Is there any way of doing it early? If you
Yeah.
need me here, I'm gonna need to be here earlier on the 21st. I'm only in partial.
Oh, okay. Is the 20th, would the 20th be better? Oh, you said you couldn't do the 20th.
The 20th I can do.
Oh, you can? Well, we usually meet on Tuesdays anyway.
He said the 20th might not work for him, I don't know.
20th, could we do it a little earlier in the morning,
Yeah,
like 10 o'clock?
I'm good. Are you okay with that, Fran? I think I would 20th at 10 a.m. or the 21st at 11:30. You choose, Mr. Shepherd. I'll go with you on.
I thought there was an objection to the 21st.
At 11:30, yeah.
Yeah, he's saying at 10.
If you did it at
No.
10.
No, he's saying the
No, I was-
20th.
10 on
Yeah.
the 20th or 11:30 on the 21st.
Yeah.
Or
what do you
even
think?
later
I
on.
can't do 11:30 on 21st.
So
I have to be out.
20th at 10 would be great by me.
Okay.
Sorry. if I'm
Okay.
late.
No. That's why we
Challenge.
talk about this
I'll let
each
you know.
time. Let's plan on August 20th at 10 a.m.
Does that affect the resolution?
The
Or the report will be ready to go
Yeah,
and
the
we'll sit
report
for
will be-
6 days? and-
Yeah, we'll get it in advance. You'll have time to
Good.
review it. Yes.
Hold on.
Okay. Yeah, the 45 days
So
takes you
is that
into.
August 11th, August the 9th? There's a council meeting tonight, and I want to make sure that I
Yeah, that's the
let
count.
council know. Is that correct?
Yeah. We tried to be mindful in that we know it's summer and there's 4th of July and vacations, and also hoping this
Is
can be
it calendar
accomplished.
days or weekdays?
The way we count it statutorily is calendar days. When a community has 120 days, I'm presuming we're going to count it the same way.
August 9th.
August 20th, 10 a.m. next meeting. All right. Motion to adjourn.
May I ask a process question, just about how the meeting's structured now?
We can talk offline. We're done with we need to stick to our agenda here. So we have motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you.